All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and finally, that's what we've been waiting for. Yes, I am referring to the new Kenobi episode. I will be giving you my thoughts on the episode and why it's my favorite of the series so far, while also continuing to have the same problems that have plagued the previous episodes. While the spectacle and emotion is at an all-time high for this show, after a second viewing and taking some time to process it, you will notice that the poor writing and plot conveniences still remain. I will be getting into this later, but I do want to start on the positives of this episode because there are a lot. First, as you can tell by my intro, we finally got our flashback. I feel the use of the flashback in this episode should have been used as a story device throughout the series. Events from the past that influenced both Obi-Wan and Vader/Anakin being recontextualized or influencing the present. Seeing Hayden and Ewan back in their Attack of the Clones look made me laugh out loud in pure joy. And for those who said Hayden looked too old, watch Better Call Saul and tell me Saul looks younger for the prequel show than he did in Breaking Bad. He looked great, relax. It was also nice to see some prequel era fighting and Obi-Wan instructing again. I think my favorite part about this is that the flashback was coming from Vader's perspective. Something I think the show has been severely lacking. Vader's trauma is such an interesting concept that should have been front and center throughout the series, not just in episode 3 and in this one. It's also implied by the shots and the editing that Obi-Wan is also recalling this same memory, which would make sense because they've been linked by the Force in the previous couple episodes. I'm predicting we will get another flashback next episode woven throughout similar to this one, but maybe in the Clone Wars era because that is when they truly became like brothers. In Attack of the Clones, it was a much more contentious relationship, I think. Another nice touch in the flashback scene is Anakin's training blade hilt resembles Vader's hilt now. If you go back and look, it's pretty cool. The next highlight was Reva, which I'm glad to say at this point. Moses was finally able to flex her acting chops and show her range. Up until this point, she only has been angry or unhinged, which did not make her that much of an interesting character. I wish they had weaved some of these emotions we saw in this episode into the series as a whole. I know we got a hint of it in episode 4 when she mentions to Leia that she needs to rely on only herself, but it was still in the same vein of manipulation and anger. Here in this episode, we got real emotion from her. Her backstory, while predictable based on the opening of the show, was nonetheless tragic. Hearing her recall hiding among the dead bodies of her friends and feeling them grow cold was chilling, to say the least. Reva's anger at Obi-Wan for allowing his student to fall so far and not being there to protect the younglings was another gut punch to an already broken Kenobi. I really enjoyed that. Her using the Empire to get to Vader was also pretty cool and was something I somewhat predicted in one of my previous episodes when I said that she was using the Empire as a means to an end. And I was happy to see that this was its purpose, that she wanted to hunt down Vader for her own selfish revenge. Though Reva's storyline by the end of the episode and throughout the series overall is still lackluster, I'm glad she finally got her moment to shine here. And her fate at the end was obviously brought about by none other than Darth Vader himself, who very much rivaled the Rogue One iteration, if not surpassed it, honestly. Seeing him march into the base, flinging open doors with the Force, and then force gripping a sizable transport, ripping it open with just the Force, was an all-time moment. Shout out to Force Unleashed for the concept of bringing down ships with the Force, and shout out to this show for doing it much more realistically. Again, Vader, or more accurately Anakin, failing because he was almost certain of victory, similar to the flashback, and that ultimately brought about his defeat in this episode by Obi-Wan, was a great touch. To top off Vader's rampage, he takes out his frustration for them getting away on Reva by taking her down with just the Force, and even toying with her to the point of ripping her lightsaber in half, throwing her a blade, and then asking her to duel, basically. Also, seeing Vader dual wielding was also pretty sweet. I honestly just love when Star Wars is people with no business fighting Vader, taking on Vader. I think my favorite part of the episode, however, was Tarla and Netbee's sacrifice. First of all, droids sacrificing themselves kills me regardless, but I really liked Tarla's character throughout this series. I think she's been the strongest character in the show aside from Obi-Wan. The Imperial Defector archetype has always been one of my favorites because it's very real. We've seen it with Callus in Rebels, and we've seen it with Thane from the book Lost Stars. Joining a group thinking you are doing the right thing only to find out you are a perpetrator of something terrible is something we've seen throughout history and is very grounded in reality. I especially liked her quote, "Some things you can't forget, but you can fight to make them better. You can't change the past, but you can control the future." Something Obi-Wan desperately needs to learn in this show. I'm glad she was the one to teach him that lesson, and we got a good smile out of him. The final piece of her and Netbeast's beautiful ending was her last words being, "May the Force be with you." She had a hand in killing Force-sensitive children and their families, and in the end, she believed in the Force and that it could right her wrongs and save the galaxy. Netby and her looking into each other's eyes in the final moments as Netby sacrificed himself was beautiful, and the score that accompanied it was just fantastic. I think it was a harmonica, I'm not sure, but regardless, I think that sequence really brought the emotional gut punch and hit all the marks for me. I mean, these two probably saved countless lives together, and here they are sacrificing their lives once again for the greater good. Obi-Wan in this episode did more of the same, which isn't a bad thing. I enjoyed his moment of pure fear after losing Tarla and reverting back to the way he was at the beginning of the series, pessimistic and fearful. Roken immediately set him straight and was like, hey, you just lost all those people, it's time to rein it back in, we gotta save more. His interaction with Reva, where he thinks over if he really wants Anakin dead, even after all he's done and all Obi-Wan has seen him do, was a really interesting moment, I thought. And seeing him leave Reva behind and kind of manipulate her was pretty brutal on his part. I mean, since he left his lightsaber when he gave himself up, it seemed he never intended to fight alongside her. This kind of ties into another piece of Obi-Wan this episode that I really liked, when he gives up his lightsaber and he says there are other ways to fight, and that quote really warmed my Return of the Jedi heart. Overall, we got some plotting and scheming Obi-Wan this episode, which is always welcome. Okay, so now it's time for the negatives, and as I said, the more you think about it and the more you watch it, the more start to pop up in this episode. First, Bail Organa's message was atrocious, and only done for the convenience so that Reva could find it later on in the episode. Why would Bail, arguably the best senator behind Padme, blatantly give away Owen, Tatooine, and Luke in a message that he was sending to Obi-Wan out of fear? If you were worried Obi-Wan is captured, don't you think this message you are sending will now be seen by the Empire? I'm not mad about him reaching out, but he could have done it with a little more discretion. It would have been cool if he used like phony names and planets, but he didn't. We will see how the next episode handles this, but for right now, it's very lazy writing. No matter how much I enjoyed Reva this episode, her presence and effect on the story after episode 4 still makes no sense. She was only in this episode to provide backstory for herself and show off how powerful Vader is. As I said in my last episode, there was no need to keep her alive. Get the tracker from her and go. She failed multiple times before, and she failed again here. The idea that she was useful to Vader and the Grand Inquisitor past episode 4 makes no sense, and was really only there for a big reveal moment, kind of like a, ooh, gotcha backstab. Yes, Reva found Kenobi when no one else could. That was where her usefulness ended. And it's not just a Reva thing, it takes away from Vader and the Grand Inquisitor. I mean, they both look pretty stupid here. This isn't much of a victory, they all got away. I can't speculate how she knew Kenobi was alive yet, but probably she got a hold of the message he sent out from the Jedi Temple warning everyone to stay away. You guys already know what I'm going to say, but deaths or death blows mean nothing in modern Star Wars. The Grand Inquisitor was just shock value. Reva was now stabbed in the stomach twice, once as a child and once by Vader, and I'm assuming she's going to survive with this new Luke information. That's why the whole end of the episode happened. Like, I just think it sets an odd precedent that now if anyone gets stabbed, it's like, nope, they can come back. No, that's not really fatal. Maybe since she had been stabbed there before, she has some mechanical parts instead, kind of like Fennec, or she wasn't stabbed in that flashback and that was more of a stylistic choice and less of what really happened. Overall, I'm just grasping at straws here. I'm just trying to explain away things that I don't think should have to be explained away. I think the show should do a better job of portraying things, and, this is all just a result of bad writing, when the work goes on to the audience to explain things that don't make sense. Overall, I did like the idea of Vader manipulating her with the promise of Grand Inquisitor, as I kind of predicted in one of my previous episodes, but the execution once again was clunky. Some nitpicks that aren't really nitpicks. Why did Reva have 2 stormtroopers secure Kenobi inside the base where the garrison isn't and closer to his allies? Of course he's going to escape, and saying the base was secure when all of her troops were anywhere but inside the base securing it was just silly. It was poor writing to get Kenobi back to the transport conveniently. Reva opening the door with her lightsaber when they tried to open it with a cannon was also silly. I feel like Reva's blade should have been the first try. If that fails, then cannon. It seems like that was just written in to provide that dramatic stab moment to scare Obi-Wan and give time for them to build up the tension of, oh, the Imperials are outside. My sister described it well, and she's a writer, so it kind of makes sense that she described this whole story structure well. But she basically said the writing for the show is all based on set-piece moments, and the avenues to get there are lazy. And one final note that's kind of a rant, but I think it's important to talk about. Objective, well-measured criticism is a good thing. I'm seeing a lot of discourse on how people should just sit back and enjoy, or people who nitpick ruin Star Wars. To me, setting a precedent of low standards for plot, story, and characters is not a good mindset, especially with all the new shows in development. What I love about Star Wars and TV shows and movies in general is the ability to dive into character motivations, identify tight storylines with well thought out themes that can all blend together to make a top notch experience. That's why I started this podcast to talk about those things. And when something is lazy, it's obvious, and just sitting back and saying, well, at least I'm getting Star Wars, it doesn't sit well with me, especially for someone who loves this property so much. Nitpicks can be annoying, and criticism for criticism's sake is just as bad. But objective or blatant issues should be called out. One tweet I saw said, if you complained or criticized the first 4 episodes, you can't say you liked this one. And it had 10,000 likes. I mean, come on, what kind of gatekeeping is that? That doesn't help the community at all. Look, I'm not expecting everything to be Breaking Bad, but I do expect a level of quality for an IP such as this, especially when we've seen it done before and better in other parts of this galaxy. A little rant I had to go on. Whether you love the show or not, I will always give you guys my honest opinion from the most objective perspective, and I'm grateful that I have the opportunity and the privilege to do that for you guys, and I thank you guys for listening, of course. This is all to say, with 1 episode left, I am happy we're on the upswing because, like I said, this was my favorite episode of the series so far, but the flaws of the previous episodes are still present, and to say this episode was flawless or a masterpiece is an overstatement. But if you loved it and you think the whole show is incredible, go for it. I'm happy you're getting the enjoyment out of it. I love when people love Star Wars. So what I want from the finale is an emotional confrontation between Kenobi and Vader. Their battle, I don't think, will be what we all expect. To say Kenobi is ready for a peak showdown and their epic rematch, I think is unrealistic because Vader is just way too strong for him at this point, as we've seen in the past couple episodes. The only way Kenobi stands a chance is if he's protecting someone, Leia in this case, but Leia can't be in the same room as Vader, not yet, I don't think. Or if he unbalances Vader by reminding him of what he's done. So really, I don't expect a big flashy battle, nor do I really want one. I expect a dialogue-heavy interaction with verbal haymakers being thrown back and forth, with just some lightsaber clashes breaking it up. But I really want the focus to be on the words and their connection. I think a Clone Wars flashback would weave in beautifully and provide a great juxtaposition to the heavy emotions of their present interaction. Contrasting a brotherly love flashback with a fiery battle would be a worthy ending to this show. But those are all my thoughts. Please interact with me and let me know what you thought of the episode on my Instagram at @star_wars_markofbalance. Thank you as always for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.